So the question is, how exactly do I start these podcast episodes? Do I say welcome back to the Live from 631 show? That's a little bit too formal. Welcome back to the Live from 631 podcast. My name is Stefan. Thank you for joining. This is episode 2. That's a little bit way too formal. I can't do that. I can say thank you. I can start off by saying thank you. Thank you for watching. This is episode 2 for those who don't know. Episode 1 is up and running on my YouTube page, on streaming services. If you're watching this after watching episode 1, you're probably asking yourself, why exactly am I not recording this from Madrid? There's many reasons as to why I did not do that, even though I told you I would. I'll get into that later. But until I figure out how exactly to start these podcast episodes, we're going to kind of be informal and just jump right into it. Like I said before, you're probably wondering why I'm not recording this live from Madrid. And if you're confused as to why I'm saying that, I just came back from traveling. Spent 9 days traveling throughout Spain and Portugal. Let me start off by saying the trip was great. That was a well-needed trip. Everything was well. Everything went well. It was beautiful. It was nice to be out somewhere else shooting. I feel like I've been doing like so much work on everything that you're watching right now, everything that I've been doing on socials, working on what I, hope to one day call a business that I haven't really been working like in the business per se, even though that's not true. And some of you might look at that and be confused. There's a difference between working on your business and working in your business, and I'll get into that later as well. But trip was great. Me and one of the homies that I graduated college with went out there and walked around a lot. Walked around a lot for sure. My legs are on fire. This is a trip that we've been planning for the last like 8 months maybe. I might not be getting that right exactly, but one of my homies that I graduated college with hit me up maybe last summer and was like, yo, bro, hit me up when you can. So I said, okay, this is weird. I always get weirded out when people say like, yo, call me. Like, you could just tell me through a text real quick. But I understand. So I get on the phone with him and he says, hey, listen, I know you travel. I see it all over socials. You tell me about, your trips when we were in class and shit. But I want to do the same. And I got the money to go. I just don't know exactly where to go and who to do it with. So I'm asking you if you want to go on a trip with me. I said, yeah, bro, I'm down. I just need to know ahead of time what exactly it is that we're doing. Because I don't do none of my trips last minute. I like to plan. I don't want to just, blow my money because shit wasn't planned properly. As you know, those who brought my course, I explain everything there. So hits me up, says he wants to go on a trip. And he was saying how he might wanted to go, I think it was like September, October time. And I told him like, I don't know too much. I'm not too sure about that because this past summer, I spent about a month in Africa traveling throughout with my family. And I didn't want to come back and then end up going on a trip 2 months later. Believe it or not, even from those that follow me, that's not my style. So I told him I'll let him know. One thing led to another. I ended up leaving my job for my Africa trip. That's a story in itself that I never really explained to too many people. But I quit my job and I was just thinking about if I was able to go on this trip that he wanted to go on. And turns out I told him like, bro, it just won't work out for October. If you want to pick a later date, we can do that. So he said, all right, how about February? I said, I'm down for that. So long story short, he said that he always wanted to catch a soccer game or football. I'm going to be referring to it as soccer. That's what we call it in the States. And he said that he said that he wanted to go to a soccer game out of the country. And he was a big Real Madrid fan. So his first thought was, how about we go to Spain? I said, sure, I'm down for it. I'm down to go again. So from around like October time, or a little bit before then, we start planning the trip. And he says that he wanted to, jump around from country to country like I usually do. So I told him the closest that I can get to country hopping is by going to Portugal. It's right next door to Spain. It's very inexpensive. Last time I went, I got tickets for like $20. This time around, I got them for $50, I believe. So we did that as well. Spain, Portugal, 9 days, well spent. Going to a Real Madrid match, my first ever like soccer game ever, was insane. That was my second time ever going to a sporting event at my age. I'm not a big sports fan at all. I'll be honest with you. I don't give a fuck about sports. But I've always told myself that I've always wanted to go to a soccer game. I've watched, FIFA World Cups growing up, and the energy is unmatched. And I've always said, even though I don't give a fuck about sports, I do want to experience a soccer game. So yeah, we planned for about like 8 months. The trip was 9 days. Every single second that went into planning for this trip paid off. The trip went about seamlessly. This was my first time ever traveling with this, like low amount of people. I've never traveled with just one other person. And to be one of the homies that I graduated with, that shit was dope. Most of the time I'm traveling with like 2-3 other people. Believe it or not, people always ask me if I ever been on a trip by myself. Still have yet to do that. I don't want to say where exactly, but I do plan on doing that in the future. I know exactly where I want to go, what I want to do. The itinerary is already set for me. Just the plane, nothing is booked yet, if that makes sense. The itinerary is set, but nothing is booked yet. So I'll be doing that in the future. But during our trip, our base was in Madrid. And then after that, we took day trips to Seville and Barcelona, it was beautiful. Seville itself, I'm going to get into that in a second. I want to say this was the most beautiful city I've ever seen in my life. One of the most beautiful cities I've ever had the chance of just like strolling through. Let me say that. And even that, since it was a day trip, take that with a grain of salt. I didn't spend much time there, but man, that was a beautiful place to shoot around and just experience. One of the reasons why I'm so happy with this trip is because it taught me two things, and a lot is coming from it. I have a video that I'm going to make solely on the soccer match between Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. I knew when we were planning this trip, I said I have to document every single step that we take into, getting on the flight and experience this game. So I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to make that, and then you'll see in the future. But not only did I have a lot of content come from this that I'm going to have to take, months to roll out, edit, and release out into socials, but also it taught me a lot about my traveling course, believe it or not. This is going to sound like an ad. This is going to sound extremely cocky. And this is not an ad, obviously. This is my own product, so what the fuck? If it's an ad, it's an ad. A shameless plug. Go buy it. But my course, I'm so proud of, and I realized this after experiencing this trip. I'll get into why exactly later, but this trip made me realize how perfect my course was, especially for people who, constantly DM me and ask me different questions about traveling and what to start with and where to go and, how to go about certain things. This trip definitely taught me, like, damn, all the time that I spent into researching and curating it definitely paid off. And I'm so proud of like what I created. And if you just follow the steps that I put in there, I think it could definitely, I wish I had it when I started traveling. I wish I had something like that for me to pay for and just get everything bundled up in one so that I can make the next trip easier and the next trip easier. But Madrid itself, let's speak about that. Beautiful city. That city gets like my my black boy fly worldwide 2 thumbs up stamp of approval. It's so, I love how it's like so easy to move around there on public transportation, walking around. I constantly say this when I'm posting about my trips. I love public transportation. And I think people think I'm joking when I say that. Nah. As someone who's like a street photographer, who loves street photography, let me say that, I have to be able to be around people as much as possible. So that's why I like to stay away from too many Ubers and shit. I like taking public transportation and just shooting around, trying to experience the culture in whichever country or city that I'm traveling in. So Madrid, going from, one tourist attraction to another, or just walking around, not only do I, applaud my boy Nemo, who I was traveling with, for making that itinerary and where we were going and being smart enough to know, like, what I also put in my course is make sure everything is close by to each other so you're not just jumping around from one side of the city to another. But not only was the itinerary set perfectly, but when an itinerary is perfect, but also the city itself makes it so easy to move around, whether you're walking, you're taking a bus, you're taking a train. In very rare cases, us taking Bolts or Uber. They're like the same thing for those who don't know. It was just so great to walk around. The highlight of my Madrid stay, since our base was in Madrid, the highlight of it was definitely the soccer game. Like that was, like I said, I've wanted to experience that for years now. And to not only experience it, but in another country, like fam, that shit was wild. I don't want to say too much. I'll put my thoughts into this video that I'm making about it. Yeah, that's gonna be like a passion project of mine. And then, like I said, we took day trips to Seville and Barcelona. Barcelona, I'll keep this quick. It was the same thing that I experienced last time. Not too much time. Like I said, was spent there since it's a day trip. Highlight of it, definitely La Sagrada Familia, the church. The architecture of that place it still blows my mind. It's kind of disappointing that they're not done with construction. And I know that shit takes time, so it probably won't be for years and years to come. I felt like it was at the same spot as it was when I was there 3 or 4 years back. But beautiful. Barcelona is just amazing. I wish we could have had like we stayed there overnight. Definitely had some like locals there saying like, damn, you can't even stay here to like, hit clubs or certain bars and shit. Well, it is what it is. Maybe next time. I forgot which one we did first between Barcelona or Seville, which day trip was first. But Seville, on the other hand, like I said, it was the day trip. Take this with a grain of salt. Part of me doesn't even want to make this statement because like I have to really sit and think about it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Seville is probably the most beautiful city I've ever experienced. I can't explain too much of what it is right now because I literally just cannot find the words, and I haven't been able to find the words over the last few days. But taking the train there, which was about like 2 hours and change, 3 hours, the second we got at the train station and then rode into the city, you immediately get immersed in the culture. And I credit Nima for saying this. He said, and I might be butchering this, the smaller a city is, the easier it is to feel the culture. And that's so true. I think I've known this, but I just never really articulated that myself. And I think that's why I love this that city so much, because of how small it felt to Madrid. And even if it wasn't small, just the area in which we stayed in, which was around the Alcazar, I believe the name of the tourist attraction was. Being in that area, you could just feel the culture. There's a lot of tourists, but you can also feel the locals around you as well. Sometimes when you're staying in a bigger city, you can't really feel that too much. I would imagine it's the same thing with maybe New York City. If you're staying in certain spots, it's such a big city that you can't necessarily feel the culture of the city because of how many tourists there is around there, or a lot of the people just not being locals. But I'm not sure if that's a good comparison or an example to compare with Seville. But man, just shooting around there, I think a part of my reason for thinking it's such a beautiful place and probably the most beautiful city I've ever experienced comes from me being a photographer, me just loving to stroll through a city. How hard or how easy is it? You know, Lisbon, on the other hand, and I'll get into this, is an extremely hard city to, maneuver around because it's very hilly. You're breaking your back walking around that city. It's a lot of walking, but not just the walking. It's hilly, so you're walking up hills. You're exhausted. You're tired. Seville, on the other hand, is flat, a flat city with the culture and the architecture stands out more, I think, than what I experienced in Barcelona and Madrid. I think anyone would say this, that 15th, 16th century Moorish style architecture, that Roman Catholic presence there, which is present in so much of um, of Europe, but definitely in Spain, where you have, I think it's like upwards of 80% of the population being Roman Catholic. It's so pronounced throughout Spain, but specifically in Seville, there's so much culture there, and you felt it just walking around, and it was beautiful. Also, it was freezing fucking cold in Madrid, so going to Seville and having that temperature change where I could actually wear like a short sleeve and you know just walk around freely was great, as opposed to Madrid, we're bundled up, cold as shit. And I'm gonna get to you Spaniards. Oh shit, I just hit my mic. I'm gonna get to you Spaniards and y'all being cold and just being fine with it. It's really weird. One of the things I hated about y'all, just being outside and eating in the cold. We're gonna get into that. Um, but I don't want to keep things too long. That's all I want to say about Seville. That's a place that, and I'm gonna end it off with this. That's a place that you go to on your honeymoon, I think. That's a place that I would definitely, I imagine myself, I don't give a fuck about no wedding, all that other shit. Honeymoon and getting away is where I definitely have to put my Black Boy Fly Worldwide shit to test, and I'm country hopping like crazy. Definitely not staying in one spot for my for my honeymoon that I have in the future. But one of the cities that I would love to experience again is Seville. That's just that place was beautiful. That place was beautiful. Moving on to Portugal, hour flight away. We stayed in Lisbon for the entirety of our time in Portugal. Didn't move around at all, which was fine. This was my second time in Lisbon, and like I said, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city. Hard to move around. It's hilly. It's a lot of walking. If your knees are fucked up, you gonna get fucked up. uh, Other than that, it's just beautiful. The food was great. Definitely, I think better food than Spain. Spain, everyone talks about, like, you're gonna YouTube stuff and people talk about the tapas and the tapas bars. Me, I'm not with that. I'm not with these little snacks I'm eating here and there. It's not, give me a full course meal or I'm not eating at all. And I'm also not a big food person, so take that with a grain of salt as well. I tell people, I choose to have the taste buds of a 7 year old. But I'm not. I was not going to Spain or doing anything specific in Spain for the tapas and looking around in different marketplace. I didn't really care about that, and I will speak about that later. You having to know what and what you do not care about before traveling. I wrote that in my course as well. So both places were definitely beautiful locations to see. This was a well needed trip for me. I was just out the country this past July, but I felt like it's been forever, to be honest with you. I don't know what it was about this trip. Maybe it was just at this time I really needed it. I've been going so fucking hard, just trying to create, edit content, worrying about like business and implementing different stuff into my routine and trying to grow a business. Not having it yet. I won't call it that just yet. But for those that don't know, this is my second time in both of these countries. And you'll never know that I was in these countries for the second time because I have absolutely zero footage to show for the first time I was there. Now you ask yourself, Stefan, why do you have zero footage to show that you were in Spain and Portugal the first time? Wouldn't that be something that you capture? You take pictures everywhere you go. You film everywhere you go. Why don't you have footage from these two locations? And I'll tell you why. The short answer is because I lost my fucking files. And that shit hurts every single time I say it. That's the short response. The long response that comes with a story. Now, the story begins with me having a Samsung T5. For those that don't know, that's an external hard drive. And me having a LaCie hard drive. For those that don't know, that's another external hard drive. When I went on this trip, I had a Samsung T5 in which I would back up all of my footage on at the end of each day. And then I also had a LaCie that I would put a second backup for all of this footage. And I would keep both of those in two separate locations throughout the duration of the trip. Long story short, I get back home, I keep the LaCie drive at home, and I keep the T5 hard drive on me, and I would always take that to class with me to edit. Editing in class, not highly recommended. However, it's what I did, and I still graduated. Very well, good GPA, but not recommended. So I would take my T5 hard drive with me to class. One day, I was getting ready for school and I couldn't find my T5 hard drive. So I said, what the fuck is happening? So I said, you know what? It's somewhere here. I remember because I was editing the night before. It's somewhere around here. I just can't find it. Let me take my LaCie drive to school with me, and then I'll find the T5 later. I get to school, I check my book bag, and I see both hard drives in there. So I was like, oh, all right, I just left my T5 in my book bag. All right, whatever. So at this point, one day, I have both hard drives on me at the same time. I say when I get home, I'll put the LaCie drive at home, and I'll continue doing what I usually do. Just edit off my T5. I get home, I don't put my LaCie drive back. I keep it in my book bag. And then I go to school the next day. And I'm editing off one hard drive. I still have both in my bag, though. I get home. I don't put the LaCie drive back again. So at this point, I'm going to school with both hard drives on me. Red flag number 1. Or maybe this is red flag number 3. At this point, I don't fucking know. But this one day I go to school and I can't find either of the hard drives. So I said, fuck it. It's probably at home. I'll check after this class. My lecture ends. I go home. I can't find either of the hard drives. Now my heart sinks to my stomach and I say, oh, fuck. If it's not at home, it has to be elsewhere. If my hard drives are elsewhere, then I'm fucked. I checked the building in which I spend 95% of my time on campus. Wasn't found there. I checked the buildings in which I spent 5% of my time there. Nothing was found there. So what do you do when you can't find your items in places where you're always at? You start checking places in which you've never been to in your life. I found out new buildings in this campus, on this campus, that I've never been to before. Looking for some shit that has zero probability being there. But I was just looking because I was fucking desperate. Long story short, searched for a few days, could not find anything. What do? As a worried person looking for their hard drives, you bet it, I go down to the police station on campus. And I said, I'm missing something. They say, what, you lost your car or something? Nah. Did someone steal something from you? It's possible, but I doubt that as well. What did you lose? I lost these 2 hard drives. They kind of look like this. And I print out papers on how these hard drives look. That's how desperate I was. These cops looked at me and said, you know what, son? All right, we'll keep an eye out. What the fuck did I expect cops to do? I don't know. But I was desperate. And I printed out pictures that they didn't give a fuck about. And long story short, I just never found it. To this day, I don't know where the fuck they are. Like when people lose a dog and then they post up, photos around, the neighborhood and shit. That's what I did on campus. Nobody ever contacted me back. I remember telling my friends that I was going to post these things around like campus, and in their face, they'd seen how worried I was, and they were like, oh, yeah, do that. But I know in the back of their mind, they were like, you're a fucking loser. And I understand, because that shit, looking back now, is a little bit nuts. Have you found these hard drives? No, nobody know what the fuck hard drives look like, bro. So, yeah, that's my story on how I not only did I go to Spain and Portugal that summer and lost all my footage, I went to over 8 countries that summer. That was my first time going to Africa. I went to Kenya, Tanzania. What were other countries? I went to London, Spain, Portugal, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia. I went to Egypt. I can't even remember. I went to a lot of fucking places, had a lot of fucking content, and I just lost that shit. All of it. But about like a month after that, 2 months after that, I just said, you know what? Fuck it. You gotta brush it off. Like, you can't. I was hurt. I was sad as fuck. Like, it was so serious, my friends couldn't even make fun of me because of it. Later on, yeah. But like immediately, that's how you know something is so serious. When your friends, my friends, wasn't even making fun of me for losing this shit. We make fun of each other for everything. I think we all got into car accidents, and then we said a joke right after that person crashed. Ah, you dumbass. Like, yeah, this was so serious, they didn't even crack jokes immediately. My brother didn't even crack jokes immediately. So about like a month or 2 after that, I just shook it off and was just like, all right, the fuck are you going to do? It is what it is. And I told myself, I kind of like psyched myself into thinking positive. And I said, you'll go back there one day. You can't get the content that you got already. Nothing can ever be remade. However, you'll go back there one day. And I was just saying this to keep myself positive. However, I didn't actually know that I was going back, but I believed I could. And I hate when people say, oh, you never know when you're going back to a place. Like, at this point, and like I said, I don't say this shit to flex. I say this because it's possible. I've been to over 30 countries. I'll go back to anywhere I once traveled to. And I believe that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get a certain shot because I could just think I can come back at a later point. No. But I said it, and then fast forward, 4 years later? That was in 2019. We're in 2023. Fast forward 4 years later, and just traveled 9 days in the same exact places that I once traveled to, and lost all that content plus more. So Yeah, you can always travel to whatever place you go to again. But before I just leave it off at, you know, the Europe trip, Spain and Portugal was beautiful. Everything was great. Seville was amazing. Madrid, I loved you. Barcelona, you were amazing as well. I got something to say about you people. This is the part when, like, let's get into let's get like kind of comedic for a second, but serious at the same time. You Spaniards have a fucking problem, and it bothered me throughout my entire trip. Why are you so okay with being cold? That's one thing I will never understand. And this is not just you, it's multiple other places as well. Y'all in South Africa, y'all love being cold as well, but y'all got like an energy crisis out there. Sometimes you have no choice but to be cold, all that load shedding shit. But you Spaniards love being cold. And there's other places in Europe as well. Tell me why people eat outside in 30 degrees weather. It makes no sense. I don't get it. It makes no sense. And I don't even think that shit makes sense to you. I seen a woman. I'm getting angry. I seen a woman do this. She pulled up to a restaurant, sat outside. As I'm walking up, her food comes out. I seen her take off her gloves. Go like this. She rubbed her hands together. That means you cold. And then she cut her steak. Those things don't go together. It makes no sense. Sit inside. Like, y'all don't have that energy crisis that South Africa has. Put the heat on. There's no reason why you should in your hands and then cut your steak right after that. It makes no sense. And then also, y'all keep the front door open at each restaurant while people inside trying to eat. I ate steak in a jacket. That don't make sense. It's not supposed to happen. It's not supposed to happen. I don't understand that. Okay, y'all want to kiki and laugh and smoke cigarettes outside? That's one thing. But you are not supposed to enjoy a meal in 30 degrees, 40 degrees weather. It makes no sense. But it's at the same time, I don't think it's just y'all. Because when COVID was happening and people could only sit outside, people were doing that in New York City. And to this day, I was never one of those people, and I'll never understand it. But that's something that really pissed me off about y'all. Like, I want more for y'all. I really want more for y'all. Stop eating food in the cold. Your food is getting cold. It makes no sense. It makes no sense, bro. And then number two, y'all have no sense in time. It's not the siestas. That's fine. You want to take a nap midday? I do that kind of right now. We don't have siestas out here in America, but I try to put in a little siesta in my schedule. A little midday, just relaxation. I'm fine with that. Your restaurants opening up at weird times of the days. Restaurants not opening up until like 6:30. I'm fine with that. The late meals, I'm fine with that. However, when it comes to serving people, oh Lord, I got the game fucked up. I was in a restaurant. These people have zero urgency to get people out, which sounds like a good thing until you trying to get the fuck out. And then it's a bad thing. I went to restaurants where they had a line waiting to serve people. And you would think when you have a line, you're trying to get other people out. No, they didn't do that. They just walked around. Waiters just walked around. They forgot you were there. It's crazy. So those two things, eating food cold, you're sick. There's no reason why you should be eating a chicken with a scarf on. It makes no sense. Your scarf is getting in your collard greens. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. There's no reason why you should flip your scarf and then, you got asparagus in front of you getting cold. It makes no sense. Why are we cooking food on a hot stove, a hot grill in a kitchen to bring it out the 30 degrees weather? I don't know, man. The aerodynamics don't make sense. If that's the word, probably not. But you feel what I'm saying? This shit is nasty, bro. Other than that, thank you very much for letting me into your country. Thank you very much for allowing me to experience your culture. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful culture. Beautiful people that love being cold. And you're fucking weird for that. And same thing goes for you, Portugal. Y'all motherfuckers are sick. All right, enough of the jokes. Let's get back to a serious topic. What I was saying before about this trip and what it made me realize. Not to boast and brag. This is just me being completely honest and looking at this from a objective standpoint. My traveling course is amazing. I know that may sound like a little bit cocky, but and this can't be the case for me because I am my absolute hardest critic, especially on this. My traveling course was the hardest project I've ever worked on. Why? It's the first time I ever worked on something for someone else. I always say this. Whenever I create, I don't give a fuck about you, the person watching, the person listening, and that may sound offensive from a listener standpoint, but you have to understand you want that from me because if you like my content, you want me to create, continuously. You want me to keep creating. Me personally, I can't do that if I'm doing it for other people. I can only do what makes me feel right, what I like to see. And then I know as a creator, and just how human nature is, people have similar interests. So there's people out there who have similar interests than me, whether you're creative or not. Then when I create what I want to create and I put it out there, there's other people that can relate to it. There's other people who can find value in it. And then they go from there, and that's what makes them like the content. However, if me personally, this is how I'm wired, this is how I operate. If I create for you, I'm going to get burnt out quick. And I'm always going to be thinking about what does the person want? What does the consumer want? I don't want to think that hard. I don't have to think when I'm creating for me because I know what I want. I don't have to constantly think about shit. This is why ideas are so easy for me because I'm only creating them for myself. If I create them for you, you don't want that. You don't want that. Of course, certain aspects of things and certain projects that I work on, I think about the consumer, but it's always me. I say this all the time. I'm selfish with my work. It's for me. If I'm working for a client, that's different. They tell me their vision. They want to hear my input. I tell them how to execute on X, Y, and Z. But when I'm creating my content, I'm never keeping you in mind. And that's what you should want. However, with my traveling course, that's different. I'm creating this with the intent and purpose for people to learn from. So with that being said, I had to think, what is the best way to educate other people? What is the best format in which I should make this traveling course? So I had to sit down for months and study. I tried to make it while I was on my vacation this past summer in Africa. And I thought it was just going to be a 1, 2, 3 thing because I knew what needed to go into, planning for a vacation, for a trip. And as it's called, travel planning course, I thought it would just be a 1, 2, 3 thing, but I had to stop and realize and assess, okay, what are the different courses that I've bought? What are the different courses that people that I've known have referred to me? And what is the best way to educate other people? Is it audibly? Is it visually? All these different things. And all together, I created my course. I released it out to the world. And immediately when I released it, it wasn't the feedback that I got from it that made me feel good. At first, it was just releasing it. I said, okay, every time I release a project, that's a win for me because as other creators can attest to this as well. And, just anybody else, we complicate things. We overanalyze. We just think, and that is, you know, uh, what is the saying? Like, overanalyzing things, overthinking thing is the enemy of progress. So now I'm forcing just to, just release shit out there. Don't spend too much time sitting on it. Just put it out there and let people consume it. So immediately after releasing my course, that was a win for me. Then after that, the few people who had bought it in that, that short window immediately, hearing the response from them was great. After a few months, them applying what I said, even still to this day, I only released my course, what was it, maybe around like September, October. So I really shouldn't be hearing the bulk of their reviews until now if you use my course right, because it shouldn't just be a 1, 2, 3 thing in which you're using to plan a trip or a vacation. So this trip, at each part of this trip, when it came to making an itinerary, seeing how the itinerary worked when we were in Madrid, when we were in Seville, when we were in Lisbon, making different comments to my friend Nima, about not falling victim to tourism traps. And what I mean by that, and this is a part of my course, you probably heard this, and if you haven't, you're getting some free game right now. When you're traveling to a location, we're all gonna get on Google and type in, what should I do in said country, in said city. We're gonna have a bunch of different links telling us what we should go and see. All of these links, all of these websites, all of these blogs are going to be having the same thing written out, just in different words. It's going to be the same locations. The order in which you should do them may be different. They might say the top 5 sites to see in, Cambodia. The top 5 sites to see in, I can't think of a country or a city right now. Whatever you want to think of, right? So, but it's on you to sit and tell yourself, what do I give a fuck about? What don't I give a fuck about? And then from there, you make your own itinerary. Otherwise, you're going to be traveling, wasting time going to different attractions that you do not care about. And on top of that, not only are you going to be wasting time, you're going to be wasting money because most of them require an admission fee. So you do not want to do that. That's one of like the highlights from my course. I tell people, because the money that you save, the time that you save, you can put elsewhere. You save money, you save time. Who doesn't love that? So I remember telling my friend Nima, like, at one point he was just like, hey, there's a tile museum in, at this part of Lisbon. I think it was in Madrid. And I had to ask him, like, all right, but do we really give a fuck about tiles? And then I think, yeah. And then we thought to ourselves and we were just like, nah, I, I really don't give a fuck about tiles. However, this is something that when you Google, you see it's something to do in Lisbon. If I'm getting the location messed up, I'm sorry. And you just got to save yourself money and time and say you're not going there. The same thing goes with seeing cathedrals. Me personally, I can see 1, I can see 2, maybe 3. By the 4th cathedral, I'm just like, dog, I don't give a fuck about this shit. God, please forgive me for saying that. But that's the truth. So, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time on these things. It's pointless. But you decide what is pointless. What I find interesting, other people may not. And I speak about that more in my course. So this is the part where I do the shameless plug, like I haven't been doing for the past however long I've been speaking about this. If you haven't already, my travel planning course is available on my website. Go buy that. $25, I believe it is. And everything you need to know to planning a trip. Planning is the most important part of a trip. If you can't do that, you're going to be blowing money. You're going to be wasting time. And it's the best thing that you need. And it's something that I wish I had when I started traveling. But to put a button on this Spain and Portugal trip, 9 days, well spent. Definitely two locations that I would recommend to anybody else to travel to. Again, depending on what you're interested in. But just all in all, two beautiful locations to see, experience a lot of culture, and just a great experience. So I'm gonna have a lot of content to post over the next, few weeks, the next few months, definitely. Just editing everything. It's gonna take a while, but that's what I love about these trips. It gives me a like a creative crutch in my my creative bank in order to just have content to sit on and edit and post for the next few months. And that's basically how I post my content. Those who follow me know I'll go on a trip. If the trip is a month long, like I usually do with my summer trips, I'll go on my trip and I'll post while I'm out there very, very seldomly. I'll post every other day. I don't post everything that I'm doing because it's not until I come back and I throw everything on the big screen and I really start editing everything is when I start re-rolling out everything or reposting everything that I did on that trip. So, for example, the Spain trip, I posted a little bit while I was out there. I came back now. It's going to take me a week or so to edit all that content, and then I repost it as if I'm out there in that moment. I don't try to, play or stunt like I'm out there in the moment, but I do tell people, hey, listen, I'm back home now. If you're a client of mine, I'm here. I'm not gonna just not show up to any of the shoots that we set up, or if you're a friend of mine, I'm here to link with y'all, but I'm just reposting my content. And I tell people that. And then it gives people to relive through me, the same way I'm reliving it, posting it. And I had someone ask me as to why I do this. And it's very simple because you always have people watching. As a content creator, you always want eyes on you. Repost your content. Some people feel strongly about this and don't want to do it. I never understood why this is a thing. And my biggest argument for this is growing up, what did all of us do? We watch TV. And on TV, what did they do? They played reruns. And what did we do as the consumer? We watched the reruns because we were entertained by whatever show it was. And if we were tired of it, guess what? We flipped the channel and we went elsewhere. However, when we got tired of a show and decided to stop watching, someone out there was watching that show for the first time, even though it was a rerun. The same way I was watching reruns of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Other people seen that in real time when new episodes came out. You see where I'm going with this? Like, the blueprints are out there. We have to just take from them. It's so simple. We have to stop complicating things. So, me as a content creator, I go on my trips, I post about it, I come back, I edit, I post it in a particular manner that I want to for my story highlights, for people to take my itineraries. Those who follow me know I do that. And then when I'm making posts on Instagram or TikTok, if I post it now, I might repost it in a month or so, or 2 months or 3 months, or the content that I posted a year ago, I might post it again. If you've been following me, you might see this and say, oh, okay, I don't want to see this. It's annoying. Like, why is he reposting his shit? You go about your day, you keep scrolling. However, I have new followers now who haven't scrolled through my entire page and want to see new content. So with that being said, content creators, repost your work. You posted something a few months back. People who have been following you for a while already seen this work. However, since then, you have regained new followers. Therefore, repost your work to show the new people what you did in the past. Don't be ashamed to repost your work. Like I said, the blueprints are out there. Television posts reruns of different shows. We should do the same thing with our content to show the people who haven't seen it before what it is, and maybe even people who've been following us want to see it again. So never be ashamed to repost your work. As a matter of fact, you should be encouraged to do so. Play the game with the algorithm. It's a game we hate playing, but we have to do it. It works to your advantage. The only thing about this that I don't like, and I think this is something that only happens to me personally and probably happens to other people, but with me reposting my work and how I travel and how I post my work period, I always have people telling me, damn, you always traveling. Like, damn, you're always going somewhere. And this happens in years in which I would only travel for 1 month. However, I'm a content creator. I stretch this material out that I post. Pause, that sounds crazy. I stretch this material out. I said it again for so long. And what I mean by this is like this past summer, or my first trip ever, was in 2018, and I left the country to travel for 2 months straight. You probably heard it in my first podcast, right? My next time traveling wasn't until a year later because when I left for the summer and then I came back, I had my college semesters to worry about. But during that entire, August up until the following May, June, July, up until my next trip, I was still posting content from my first trip. So people were always thinking that I was still traveling. And this is how I usually travel. I have one big trip a year. And I always tell people this. It's not like I try to like play a game on social media and have people think this. I tell people, no, I left for a month and I'm just posting this. I left for a month in July. I'm still posting about it in December. I'm still posting about it in February. I'm still posting about this in April. And it's because of how I stretch content out. And this is why you'll see more content creators talking about having filming days, 1 day a month, where you can get all your ideas. You rent out a studio and you film for the entire day. So now you have content to post continuously for the next month, maybe 2 months. Maybe it's only a few weeks until you can get more content out there. So you have to really be strategic with how you post your content, how you post your work, because it can relieve and put a lot less stress on you as a content creator. We're always thinking about what we should create next, right? And not only when you create next, but in which manner should you post about it. So if you had a day in which you can shoot everything at once and then spend the rest of the time editing, and then you spend a few days editing and now you have a month worth of content to post, you can now worry about other stuff. So these are just like my mind is now finally operating on my way of planning things out, my way of creating now through experience. And this is with everything in life. It becomes easier. It becomes easier, but at the same time, it opens your mind up to different avenues and different ways in which you plan to scale. I hope so. And I hope this is the way for other people. Recently, I've been, my mind is constantly thinking about, how do I scale? How do I create a better life for myself? How do I create that ideal life that I have made up in my head? But also, I think everyone kind of shares the same sentiment, what we strive for. And what is that? Ultimately is freedom. Now, we all have our own definition of freedom. However, I'm going to say my definition, and I put money on it. it relates or aligns with yours as well. Freedom, I look at peace of mind. Freedom means money to me. Freedom means having an ample amount of time. Those three things there are what freedom means to me. Family also. That means freedom to me. And I had to think to myself, in which ways do I want to, acquire this freedom? And I had to take a step back and look at what I was doing. What was freelancing doing to me? What does, working a 9 to 5, working in corporate America for some people, what does that do for them? And what do they hate about it? And how exactly should we go about changing it? And for me, what I realized was, with everything that I'm doing creative, I had to take a step back and not give a fuck about the creative side and worry more about the business side. How is it that I'm running? I don't want to say a business, because this isn't exactly what I have going on right now. But how is this how's this operation running right now? What am I doing and what do I have to change? So last summer, I left my job. I don't think I've said that. Last summer I left my job. That's another reason why I had to push back my. I don't know if I explained the story in the beginning right, and I'm not going to go back to it, but that's another reason why I couldn't go on my Spain trip with my guy Nima in October, just because I just didn't want to. I left the job, just came back from a trip, and I didn't want to hop on another trip, and it just felt very irresponsible to blow money like that. So I said, give me some time. But last summer I left my job, and for reasons that I won't name, but ultimately it was just to go on my Africa trip. But the same problem we have with our 9 to 5 jobs. We're trading time for money, and we hate it. We're in a rat race. That's what we call our 9 to 5 jobs. We call it the rat race. And even people who freelance too, they leave their 9 to 5 jobs and they end up going into what we call the rat race. But you don't look at it that way because you're working for yourself. You think everything is great, but you're taking that same flawed mentality that you had at your 9 to 5 job that you hated, and you're bringing it over to, freelancing and this business that you're trying to start. So, what I mean by this is I had to look at the business of things, and I said, okay, I want to make what I'm doing more profitable. I want to, I want more money. I want more freedom. I want more time. I want all these different things. So something has to give. I stopped worrying about the creative shit, because you can't just rely on that. I don't care how good you are. Bragging about being good at whatever it is that you do, that's one thing. That's cool. You so good at X, Y, or Z. However, everybody who's good at something looks at other people who are not as good at them in that same craft, and they get jealous because that other person is profiting more than them. This is why being good at whatever it is that you do doesn't fucking matter. Nobody cares. To get clients, yes, you have to do that. But if you're good at something but you can't sell yourself, that's one thing. You're not making this shit sustainable. And you need sustainability to not only continue doing whatever it is that you're doing, but you need sustainability to live that lifestyle that you dream to live, not the one that you dread right now. So in December, I was able to get my highest paid client to date. How was I able to do so? The months leading up to that point, I stopped worrying about the creative side of things, and I start worried about business. What is the business of the craft that I'm in right now, the field that I'm in right now? What is the business of photography? What is the business of videography? Freelancing. How should I go about doing X, Y, or Z? I never once looked into licensing my work, my intellectual property. What is the correct way to go about pricing myself, the value that I'm bringing to other people. So I spent months researching other people, asking questions. I looked at other businesses, other freelancers. I looked into different fields, kind of how they're profiting off of the work that I'm creating for them. Then I looked at my field and saw what are the different ways to go about licensing my work, the usage. And then December comes. Long story short, a client reaches out to me asking for work. I stopped using the time for money method and I used the value-based pricing that I learned from a man by the name of Chris Doe on YouTube. Type in his name, fall into a rabbit hole, if you will, especially if you're creative. Creatives, you might find more of his work beneficial than just a regular 9-to-5 worker. But he speaks a lot about value-based pricing. Long story short, I educated myself on my field, on a new way of doing business, and I was able to throw a price at this company and end up getting paid what would have took me months to get paid at my 9-to-5. The second in which that happened, the second in which I got those payments, ACH transactions sent to my account, a light bulb went in my head and I said, I have to do shit differently now. Once you see the possibilities, once you see the possibilities of what can happen, how things can be different, that is like that's all I needed, basically. I'm starting to lose the words into what I'm exactly trying to say, but that's all I needed. And I immediately said, I have to change everything about what I'm doing right now so I can continue to see those results. So I can continue to get paid the same way I got paid from this project. A project in which was the most I got paid. And I also had one of my homies, like my right-hand man, Carlson, be able to, step on the project and help me out. But I say all that to say this project, that client that I had, after, months of thinking, kind of lit the light bulb in my head to think about ultimately wanting to start a creative agency. And around that time when I had that client, I was, watching a lot of Chris Doe interviews and content that he posts on his YouTube page, The Future. And I'm seeing a lot of interviews from other, businessmen or creatives that had creative agencies. So I spent a few days on Google typing in creative agencies in New York City. I live an hour away from the city. This is where I do most of my work. And I decided to see what do creative agencies offer, because everything that I'm seeing is aligning with everything that I'm hearing aligns with what I want to do. But I wanted to double check and make sure. Researching and gaining knowledge the last few months helped me out. Let's see what it does in the months to come. So after going on hundreds of websites of different creative agencies, I noticed that I am able to do about 50% in which these creative agencies offer, which is, video production, photo production, knowledge on SEOs and KPIs and, content writing and, a lot of other different tasks. And then the task in which I myself wasn't able to do, I knew people personally that could do these different services that these creative agencies could do or offered. So I thought to myself, damn, that would be dope if since I know a majority of the shit and then I know, all the other tasks that I can allocate to other people, in which these creative agencies offer, that would be dope if I could have my own. And I said, this is the perfect moment, or this is the perfect ideal to scale and grow a business in doing just that. It's something that's, is such a fresh thought. I probably shouldn't even be saying this on camera right now because I'll probably end up not doing it. But why not? You know, this is something that I think could be very promising. It's in a field that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, everything that I've been doing the past 7 years falls aligned with that. And I know, like, me and my homie Carlson, him as well, he can do a majority of the things that these companies at offer to other companies, these services that these agencies offer to other companies. And we always talk about it's so hard being, you know, a content creator because you are the creative agency. You are that person. You're doing, the photo, the video work, the content writing. You are looking up, different ways for you yourself to engage with your following, the best ways to do so. We all have different ways in which we believe that is that's possible. And I spent the last 8-10 months really studying social media and different companies and learning how they go about creating and reaching different clientele and how they get their leads and the best way to get leads and the bad ways in which they're going about getting leads. So with all this knowledge that I'm gaining over the last few months, this is what I want to do in the future, I think. And I basically was telling Carlson the other day that the company in which the client in which I got in December, which was my highest client to date, was the first time I ever got a job and said, fuck, should I do this? Because it was kind of scary. It was risky. Like, how do I do something that I've never necessarily done before, but I know I can do it. And the stuff that I can't do myself, I can allocate to someone else, And the second I felt that like uneasiness, in the moment, it felt very nerve wracking. And over the next few weeks after that, I was stressing a lot, for reasons that I really didn't have to, because I was able to learn what they needed relatively quick. But that was the first time I felt risk in a project. Every other job that I had was just effortless, like, yeah, all right, yeah, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? And when things are just that effortless, for me at least personally, the pay was never what I wanted it to be. The pay was never great. So that's when I learned there's value in taking risk. Let me say that again. There's value in taking risk. When I decided to take risk, the pay was higher. And I want more risky jobs. And the riskier the job, the more people I have to bring on board to help me out and allocate these different tasks to other people. And I'm willing to do so because, like I said, with more risk, there's a higher pay, and I'm able to do that. With these effortless projects that I was taking and there's no risk, I could never allocate this work to someone else because I would not be making any profit. So that's how I'm thinking now. The next few weeks, all I'm thinking about is scaling. How do I scale? Because when I scale, this now can become a business. And when this becomes a business, I can now have more free time, something that I value so much, to do what it is that I want. And with time comes freedom. And the more I scale, the more money I make. And again, money I look at as freedom because money gives me time so that I can allocate elsewhere. And with money and time, that comes peace of mind. Does that make sense? If so, I believe that's the end of the episode.